is Vina, aka Miss WC Reader, and welcome back to my channel. So a new article about Romantasy dropped, and I just wanted to discuss it because there were a couple of things that I was reading the article and they were kind of making me mad, so let's talk about it. I want to start off by saying Romantasy is not new. This portmanteau is new, but fantasy romance has existed for a while now, and I don't care what the girlies on Book Talk are saying about how this is a new genre and fantasy romance is something different. Every time they try to explain it, they sound stupid because they're saying the exact same thing in different wording. And that's all this is, the same thing but different words to describe it. What I didn't agree with in this article is some of the stuff that the authors and agents and editors were saying about Romantasy and the framing of it as a genre, and how much of it was rooted in internalized misogyny that they don't even realize. For example, in this article, they talked to Cassandra Clare. She said she was talking in regards to the popularity of A Court of Thorns and Roses and Sarah J. Maas's books getting sexier and sexier as the series continued, and then they had to kind of switch the age category that it was in. Cassandra Clare says it birthed this genre of romantasy, which to me is books that contain a lot of the tropes that make YA popular but also have explicit sex in them. To me, that is the same argument as new adult, which there are a lot of people who are like, no, we need new adult. I find that a lot of the argument for new adult is one, just rooted in the millennial urge to not want to grow up and experience adulthood. We see this trend going around just like in society in general right now, where it's like, I'm just a girl. I'm just a teen mom who got pregnant at 26, and like a lot of these women just don't want to grow up. They want to live in nostalgia a lot. They want to constantly talk about healing their inner child. I don't personally talk about healing my inner child. I'm focused on making adult me the best that I can be. Like, childhood is long gone. We are the adults now. Like, I was even seeing it over Christmas where a lot of people were like, Christmas just doesn't feel the same. It's not magical like when I was a kid. I'm like, that's because you are the adult. It is your job to make Christmas magical for the children in your family, the same way that adults made Christmas magical for you. And like, I'm starting to see a rise in the discussion of how a lot of millennials do not want to embrace the fact that they are getting older and they are no longer the children. So they're heavily clinging to stuff from their past. And this kind of new romantasy, new adult trend, I feel like plays into it, because a lot of people, they refuse to read adult books. They have these misconceptions of what adult books have in them. So they only want to read stuff that feels familiar. They only want to read YA. And that's why we're getting so much spicy YA as well, because you have so many adult women who don't want to leave reading that genre to children. And I say this as somebody who's writing a YA currently. I still read some books here and there, but as I get older, it's not really for me. I want to read more stories about people who are my age range. And I've asked a question about what makes new adult because there's no distinct writing style that separates it the way you have a distinct writing style between the kid lit and adult books. People keep saying we need a bridge category. YA should be the bridge category. YA should be the bridge category from the children's reads of picture books and middle grade to the more adult heavy reads. YA should be the bridge category. Once you're an adult, you have free range of the bookstore. You can read whatever you want. And in high school, they teach us to start examining these adult books. And it's natural to be curious about stories that feature characters a little bit older than yourself. Like, when I was in high school, it was normal to start slowly picking up adult books, but a lot of women in particular, they don't want to pick up adult books. And I focus specifically on women because this is who the romantasy conversation is centered around. Men are not really in romantasy like that. They're not pushed towards romantasy. And we often push teenage boys from middle grade right on over to adult. There's not a lot of books in the YA space for them, particularly for boys of color. Like, I was even seeing librarians when there was a discussion recently talking about, well, I just give like young black boys these books, and every book they listed was something by a grown-ass man for an adult audience. Now, also in this article it says, in some respects, romantasy has the feel of young people's literature. The themes are Pixar coded: forgiveness, compassion, overcoming adversity, celebrating difference, with a swoosh of black eyeliner. Kat Klein, an editor at the Harlequin imprint Canary Street Press, describes the genre as more welcoming than 20th century fantasy, which many readers now see as sexist. Romantasy is emotion positive. It's all about communication and falling in love, she told me. There's less emphasis on world building and more on representing strong female characters. I'm not gonna lie, I got really mad when I read that. For one, because I don't necessarily see there being emphasis about communication in these stories. There's often a lot of miscommunication and women not clearly stating their feelings, but also the idea that there's less emphasis on world building and more on representing strong female characters. What does that mean? Because I find a lot of these characters are not strong. Like, we're told at first that they're strong, that they're street savvy, that they've been on their own for years, just like fighting for themselves, and then as soon as they get around a man, they start acting dumb. They start acting like they have no sense, like they can't provide for themselves. Like, we get a lot of these clumsy girls. We get a lot of them jumping to conclusions. They get very horny and sex obsessed when I'm like, you're like supposed to be telling me that you're grown and you've been on your own for so long. And that's another thing too, like a lot of these characters are like 18, 19, 20, and we're supposed to believe they are pros. Like they are hardcore, have all the experience, even though these are like among their first relationships. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it's a weird kind of wish fulfillment to me, because I'm like, a lot of the women writing these, I'm like, that wasn't your experience at that age. That is what the fantasy of what you wish it was at that age, but you didn't even come into your own till you were a little bit older, from what you keep saying. But women are being pushed into romantasy versus just like adult fantasy. We've already had a hard time breaking into adult fantasy and been taken seriously. A lot of stuff does unnecessarily get labeled as YA because a woman wrote it, but then that is further exhausted when you have publishers buying scripts, like manuscripts that were literally written as YA, and just republishing them, and they're not changing anything about them to feel any more adult. And then you have them specifically looking for these books that read like YA with sex, and these same editors are trying to make an argument that, oh, you guys are just mislabeling these books as YA because you're being sexist towards women. You're being sexist towards women by picking up some of these books that don't showcase women with their own agency. And you're saying that in order for women to succeed in the fantasy space, they have to read younger, they have to read more romance focused, they have to be spicy. We can't do the same level of world building as a man. And I find that the best books are the ones that do have a well thought out world and have thought about how things work as far as the magical beings in society, but can also give you a good romance. They said, despite the genre's egalitarian spirit, the most prominent romantasy authors are white. There's no egalitarian spirit in romantasy because it's founded off of books that are inherently white, mostly white cast, written by white authors, based in white mythology. People of color and queer authors have really not been able to break out in this fantasy romance space at the same level as these straight white women. So there's no egalitarian spirit because it's not embracing other cultures and societies. It's still written from a very Western lens. It's not embracing other communities' types of storytelling. They mentioned like the Mormons and like the stay-at-home moms finding a space in this genre, and like a non-traditional career path. Even the women of color written books that I can think of that have gotten buzz in this space, they still read to a Western lens. They're still steeped in white mythos. A lot of them have white characters in them, including as the love interest. Like, I don't understand what they were trying to say here. Like, yes, they acknowledged it was a problem, but at the same time, you're trying to paint it as such this open space, and it doesn't make sense because it's not an open space. And then they talked about trope marketing, which I feel like has gotten out of hand in the past couple of years, just because the publishers are not trying to do their jobs and actually market books. They've relied that up to the authors, and a lot of authors do not know how to market their books. So what they did is they saw that romance was marketing with tropes, and everybody started marketing with tropes. Like, even people who are writing memoirs I've seen have done those trope arrow picks, trying to tropify their books. And I'm like, some of the stuff you guys are listing on these arrow picks are not tropes, nor are they key selling points to your book. And it's not really telling me what your book is about, which is a discussion we've been having the past few years. Like, tell us what your book is about. There's an assumption that everybody picks up books solely for tropes, and that's just not true. Taking a subset of one online space and a very white online space and applying it to everybody does not work. But that is what Romantasy is banking on, that everybody picks up books because of tropes and the way the cover looks. So Entangled in particular has their authors fill out a form listing all the tropes that are going to be present in the book and the heat level on a 5-point scale, which I also don't see how that would work because everybody's interpretation of heat and spice is different. A lot of the stuff that I see people calling spice in this space, I'm just like, that's not even pepper. And then, like they said, also they do the ratio of romance to suspense from a maximum of 10 to a minimum. The maximum of 100 over 0 to a minimum of 20 over 80. I don't understand what that means. They would have to break it down to me for what that means, and it's not broken down here in this article what that even means. And quite frankly, I don't find Entangled romantasies to be great. Like, I've tried reading a couple of them now. I have an issue with how Entangled markets their books because they tend to ignore their authors of color. They don't acquire that many to begin with, and then they don't promote their stories. That's a problem I've been running into when it comes to Black authored books, like that are in this fantasy or no more romance like space. They don't want to promote these books at the same level that they're promoting their white books, and then they just want to adjust their contract or release them from their contract after. They have already stressed that they are more concerned about what the book looks like. So they're Their way to hook readers in is by having the cover look pretty, by having pretty end pages, by having sprayed edges, by doing these limited first run special editions, which a lot of the other publishers have picked up as well. Not all of these books are being marketed the same, and though I have noticed that if your book has a special, like, pretty first edition, it's getting more marketing over the other books at your publisher slash imprint. Which, again, at the end of the day, a lot of authors of color are the ones that get hurt the most by this because they're not getting any attention from their publisher. Some are lucky if they can even get their book posted once on their publisher's social media. And then it like, again, pushes for tokenism, which is something that I hate, where these publishers, they put all their energy into promoting that one author of color. And that one author is getting all the attention. Their book is getting the money into to be pushed onto all the lists, because we know the list is a numbers game. It's pay for play. You can have certain sales that are less than people the same week and still make the list. They pay to position to put your books in certain spaces so people are more likely to pick it up, and then they use these titles to further promote these books. They comp books for people all the time, which no one can tell me comping books does not help. So there's just all these different factors they do to position certain people and to kind of pat themselves on the back and being like, well, we have our one diverse author over here. And at the end of the day, we do have a problem with the way publishing is moving so fast right now. I've always said, like, publishing feels both too slow and too fast because they take like 2 years between acquiring and releasing a book that sometimes trends have already passed, and they're not looking forward to new things. They're constantly trying to capitalize on the current trend. So something could be trending right now. They'll acquire a bunch of books. We're not seeing those books for 2 years. By the time those books come out, we're kind of over those types of stories. So in that way, it's too slow, but at the same time, it's fast because now we're seeing authors who are getting deals back to back. Before their first book is even published, they have about 2 to 3 book deals under their belt based off of just having one book deal for a book that hasn't come out yet. Their book comes out, it doesn't do well. They're not able to take that feedback and apply it to their other books because their other books are already being pushed. They're working on writing book number 3 now, and so they don't know what to improve because at the time they're getting feedback on book 1, it's like, well, book number 3 is already written and I'm sending it for edits. And some of these books do need more rounds of edits. Like, I've been talking to a lot of authors this past year, and they're talking about how their publisher didn't do any developmental edits. Developmental edits are kind of going away, and there's so many books that I've come across from, like, this could have been great. This would have been a solid 5-star read, but it's barely hitting a 3 because the plot is unclear. It's like the author got an idea because publishers are focusing heavily on high concept books, so you have to have something catchy and interesting to pull the people in. A lot of these books are being sold based off of a proposal. So, like, the idea comes up, but then the author has no idea how to execute it. And that's where a developmental editor would be able to come in and help them further expand on their idea by asking the right questions, but that's not happening. So they get this concept, they start writing the book, they have no clue where it's going to go. There's no clear thing that the main character is working towards. And instead of somebody pulling them aside and being like, okay, what are they working towards? Let's, like, work on this a little bit more to really get to the heart of this story. They're getting like a couple of notes and then it's just going for edits. The author does one more round of edits and then we're going to printing arcs. and then they might just clean up some of the grammar, and we're getting a final book. And so everything is just feeling rushed and underdeveloped because we didn't take the time to work it properly. That's why so many authors, their first book is reading great, because they've spent more time working on that first book. Like many of them have spent like 10 years working on that first book, or like at least 3 to 4 years working on that first book, and then their subsequent books, it's just back to back, because publishing also doesn't pay well. So because publishing is not paying well, people are trying to get as many deals as possible. You have these strict deadlines you have to write to. You're trying to hit your deadline so that you can get paid, and you don't want any delays in your deadline. And so it just becomes a cycle of just putting things out to put them out and not really putting any care into them. And I'm really curious to see how things go in the next couple of years, since we are getting so many complaints about how these books are being written, if things are going to change, if publishing is going to implode, where this romantasy thing, like as a genre, will be in like 5 years from now, because the publishers are already saying they're sick and tired of getting so many romantasy books submitted to them. They were saying that last summer, but I'm like, you guys pushed for this. You pushed for people to relabel their manuscripts and immediately jump on this new category, and now you no longer want these stories. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Let me know. I would still read the article. I do think there were some interesting tidbits to think about there. I want to know where this genre is going to be in about 5 years, and if publishing is going to implode with just the way they are currently structuring things. If you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!